All right, so for number 2, we're asked to use the unit circle definitions to give the exact value. So the first thing we need to do is see who secant belongs to. And secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So what I want to do is I want to find cosine of 45. After I find the cosine of 45, then I want to take the reciprocal of it. And then I need to rationalize it if necessary. Lastly, I want to check my sine value to see if it's positive or negative based on the quadrant. Okay, so cosine of 45 now. Ms. Meek hopefully went over all the special angles with you. So cosine of 45 is radical 2 over 2. So what I need to do with this then is I need to flip it to get the secant, excuse me. So that's 2 over radical 2. And then I need to rationalize it. And I need to rationalize it because there's a radical in the bottom. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by radical 2. And that gives me 2 radical 2 over 2. And then I can reduce it by canceling the 2's out here and here, dividing them out to get 1's. So this is just radical 2. Then I need to check my signs to see if it's positive or negative based on a quadrant. Now, this is a quadrant 1 angle, and that means that all students take calculus. So in quadrant 1, they're all positive. So this is going to be a positive radical 2 for an answer. And that's how you do it. Let's take a look at cotangent. So for number 2, we have a cotangent of 2 pi over 3. The first thing that I want to do is I want to find the tangent of 2 pi over 3, which means that, I don't know about you, but I think much better in degrees. So what I need to do is I need to do my conversion factor. 2 pi over 3. Remember that to convert, we want the pi's to cancel, so pi has to be on the bottom. Boom, boom. 3 goes into 180 60 times, and 2 times 60 is 120. So I want the tangent of 120. Okay, so now this is a quadrant 2 angle. So for quadrant 2, we need to do 180 minus the angle to get our reference. So I want tangent of 60 degrees. Okay, so this is reference angle. All right, so now I need tangent of 60. So I'm going to do my 60 degrees. So that's this one. Tangent should be radical 3 over 1. Tangent of 60 is radical 3 over 1. Once I get this, I need to do the reciprocal of it. Remember to flip it because I'm actually looking for cotangent. So when I flip this, and then I would need to rationalize. And that gives me radical 3 over 3. And then looking at the quadrant 2 angle that's here, sine is positive, which means that tangent has to be negative. Cotangent is negative, so I have to have a negative sign with that. All right, so maybe let's write some steps down for this one because I think I forgot to do the steps here. So first I did this, which means that I needed to find tangent of 2 pi over 3. And that means that I need to change to degrees. Once I change it to degrees, then I find the reference angle. based on the quadrant. Our reference angle is 180 minus the angle because it's quadrant 2. Then, after I find the tangent, then I have to take the reciprocal because I'm actually not finding tangent, I'm finding cotangent. So I have to flip it. And then I rationalize. And then lastly, check to see if it's positive or negative based on the quadrant. Boom. Okay. So there's your letter B. Let's take a look at letter C. Secant 270. You know what I love about 270? It's a quadrantal angle. Indeedy. So when I go to do this one, the first thing I need you to know is that secant is cosine. So we need to find the cosine of 270. So in my unit circle, 270 is here, and 0, negative 1. So the cosine is the x value. So that's 0. So the cosine of 270, is 0. And then I need to flip it, okay? So remember, 270 is a quadrantal, so we look for the cosine, which is the x value, that's this. But then you have to flip it because we're looking for the reciprocal. We're looking for secant. So when I flip this, I'm going to get 1 over 0, which is undefined. So the answer to my question for what's the secant of 270 is undefined. And then lastly, we've got cosecant. Let me move this one up. Cosecant of 7 pi over 6. So you know what we need to do. We need to change this to degrees. We have to look and see, this is a sine sandwich. This is a sine function. So we want sine of 7 pi over 6. So we need to change it. Let's get our conversion factor, which means pi's on the bottom. The pi's cancel. 6 goes into 180 30 times. And 7 times 30 is 210. So let's look here. 210 is a quadrant 3 angle. So our rule for quadrant 3 is 210 minus 180. And 210 minus 180 is 30 degrees. That's going to be our reference. So we want sine of 30. Sine of 30 is 1/2. Then you got to flip it. Let me move this over. There we go. Because we're not really looking for the sine, we're looking for the cosecant. So we got to flip this. That's going to give us 2 over 1. And then we have to check for sines. So we already said this was a quadrant 3 angle, which means that tangent's positive. So sine and cosecant are negative. So we got to put a negative there. There's our answer, -2, or -2 over 1. Let's write some directions down. The first thing we did was we changed it to sine. Then we changed it to degrees. After you changed it to degrees, then you had to find your reference angle. Your reference angle was for quadrant 3. After you found your reference angle, you did the sine of that value. Then you flipped it because you had to take the reciprocal of it. And after you flip it, then you realize that quadrant 3, you got to check for positive or negative based on the quadrant. It may be helpful to go back and review this section again to make sure that you understand how to do these reciprocal functions for exact values. So you're essentially changing it to the sine, cosine, or tangent function, doing the thing, finding the value, then flipping it and rationalizing it and checking the quadrant to see whether it's a positive or negative. The only one that's different than that is letter C, and that's because it's a quadrantal, so you use the unit circle value.